I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Bellows Falls Union High School. It is December 28th. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
I would like to add somewhere in there a principal's report, because I would like to fill the board in on what our thinking is for the second semester in terms of efforts that we're making to get all students in the building for 4 days.
Would you mind putting that like a 5B, Molly? Because as I said, I may be called away and I want, in anything where you get action, you want to have it me not have to depend on me.
So mine could be, yeah, it can be after we're done with everything, but it's mine is not an action item for the board.
Okay, we will be at 5B, will be principal's report, and we also need to add an executive session. So number 7 will be executive session.
Is there a purpose to that, Molly, a specific?
Oh, yeah, give me a minute.
Statutory, thanks.
I have an email, but I just trying to run 2 screens here. Chris, can you help me with that? I thought I read where there needed to be an executive session.
Which Chris?
Yeah,
Chris Pratt.
I don't know anything about an executive session.
Chris Pratt, did we need an executive session?
I don't think so. The only thing
Okay.
have been having executive session on was the superintendent's evaluations.
Oh, that was for Wyndham. I'm sorry, wrong board. Scratch that. Okay. We're gonna go to communication and public comments. I'd like to take anyone who has anything. It looks like we got a few people in our chat. Chris, can you take the agenda off so maybe we can see people?
Yes.
Looking for hands of anyone who would like to speak.
I don't have anything in the chat.
I got Ian.
Hi there. This is Ian Spartalotti. I'm a parent from Westminster. I have a son who's a senior at the high school, and I understand that there's a discussion coming up about having sports or winter activities during remote learning, and I definitely want to advocate for sports to start up as soon as possible. My son's on the basketball team. As I mentioned, he's a senior. And obviously this has been a very, very difficult year. My belief is that getting movement and exercise is extremely important for mental health and morale for anybody who has that opportunity. We saw soccer be very successful and safe this year. Obviously that's outside. I know the governor's rules that he put out last week said non-contact drills, keeping distance, wearing masks. I know how the gym is set up, so I know that students really don't have to spend a lot of time inside other than in the gym with lots of space to get their practices in, at least at this point. And I do feel that I understand that the remote learning was decided upon to allow for any potential surge of COVID cases around the holidays. And I fully agree with that decision. I do think that this is a different case. And I do also wonder if the boards would have made that decision if we had the data from the governor and the state of Vermont showing that the mitigation efforts we made at Thanksgiving as a state were pretty successful, and that we would be hopeful that the same thing would happen for Christmas. You know, I noticed the numbers today still haven't jumped up over that 100 person per day, 100, you know, that we were seeing a little bit after Thanksgiving. So hopefully those numbers will stay low and will be a very successful state and safe. So my sense is that the remote learning decision was a good one and is still the right thing to do. But I also feel that based on what the governor has been saying, that basketball practice can happen safely. And certainly competitively, is that our team will be at a significant competitive disadvantage this season if we have to wait, because all the other schools, I don't know if all the other schools are going to start playing. I can't say that certainly, but I assume so. So I definitely think that that there's a lot of good reasons to go ahead and let the kids start playing as soon as possible. And I would go back to my personal one, which is that I feel that it's both in my son's best interest of my son's mental health. But also, again, he's a senior. This is his last chance. This year has been really difficult, and we've lost a lot of opportunities for our graduating seniors this year. And I feel that the time has come for us to go ahead and allow these kids the opportunity to live their lives and to do their thing, especially if they can do it in a safe manner under the state's guidance. Thanks.
Thank you. Jason Terry.
Hi, Molly. Thank you. So on December 22nd, Governor Scott announced that winter sports can begin on December 26th. This was also signed off by the VPA and the Winter Task Force. All extracurricular activities are important, all of them. Some of the best memories created are in the classroom of athletics. Some kids are marginal in school, and without athletics, they may skip school entirely. The practices need to start right away so that the coaches can prepare the student athletes for the season. The kids need to have time to properly work on the skills required to compete. If they start on January 11th, which is what has been recommended, then the first 4 games may be canceled and not made up. The Holland Gym, which is one of the biggest gyms in the entire state, can be used safely by the players and coaches, and using our gym is much safer than any player going to Rutland or any other surrounding town and using a rec gym. It does not make sense to use a rec gym and risk potential sickness when we can use our gym under proper direction, following all the guidance and protocols in place. The athletes have been doing great work with following all the rules for the last 10 plus months. And COVID fatigue is real. The mental aspect of what this is doing to our kids is real and has been well documented with results that are still undetermined. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, I don't see anyone else. Do you? Oh, I got John Terry with a hand up. You're up, John.
Hi, thank you. I would just like to briefly say that as a player of the boys varsity basketball team, I feel it's very important that we need to start practicing and playing as soon as possible. And I'm speaking for myself and along with many of my teammates by saying that we understand the risks of being on the court, but at this point we are willing to follow any protocols that are given to us as long as we are able to have the opportunity to play. And for many of us, basketball is a determining factor in terms of our future. If my teammates and I are willing to take the risk to get on the court, we hope that people will consider what is best for the athletes who have worked hard and deserve the chance to play. And once again, I would just like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and I encourage you all to make the right decision and to keep the athletes in mind as you do so. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other public comments? I see nothing on the board. Lynn?
Christian Terry has asked to speak, has his hand up.
Okay,
Hi, can you hear me okay?
we can.
Perfect. Thank you so much. My name is Christian Terry. I am a Bells Falls Union High School graduate, and I currently teach in Lebanon, New Hampshire at a Lebanon Middle School. And I just want to give my point of view on the subject. When I played basketball at BFUHS, I was the basketball captain for a couple of years. I was very avid in the school protocols, and any opportunity that was given to me, I was able to do that. So with this, I want to just point out that the kids are ready. They're ready to play, and they really want to play. Talking about in Bells Falls with the students, I hear it with my brother, and I hear it with just the community as well, playing basketball. I go up to the rec and I see kids playing. They're taking these protocols. They're able to be safe in the gym. As somebody pointed out, these protocols are in place for many of these students to practice and to be successful in this situation. With a lot of this, what's going on, basketball is for the students, and it's really for those that go to school. They really want to strive to be the best they possibly can. So I just want to point out that it's really important for the students to have this opportunity to play basketball, as it really drives a lot of these students to be successful. And, they can do these prohibitions for the students. So making sure that we are providing those opportunities for the students. Thank you.
I have a letter that was sent to me at 5 o'clock tonight, and I ran in here to turn my computer on when I get out of work. There's very many minutes between that time and time of meeting starts. So I've been trying to just scan it so I didn't look like a real idiot reading it, because it's just got sent to me. But I have a letter sent to me from Tammy Nystrom, and she has asked that it be read to the board during communications. So here we go. Dear Bellows Falls Union High School Board, may I start off by saying what so many others have already expressed. Thank you for your time and commitment during these challenging times. I do believe our district and schools have done a great job navigating such a trying situation. With each passing week, more challenges arise, and I can imagine being a teacher, school employee, and board member is nothing as you imagined it would be. I am always trying to be objective and sensible in these times and put my faith in those that do it best, those that are trained in the subject matter. And while COVID has redefined how you all do your job, how you make decisions for our youth, and how you go about your personal life, let us also not lose sight on how the life of children has been completely distressed. I know it is easy to say, easy to talk about, but as some of you are parents, these conversations are not for the lighthearted. Each day is balancing act of following guidelines, being sensible, and maintaining our children's mental health. Again, easy to say, but if you are living it and doing everything as close to guidelines as possible, it leaves one fatigued mentally and emotionally. I am tired, the kind of in your bones tired. My days are spent saying no to my children. No, you cannot go with me shopping. Why take the risk? No, you cannot go to your friend's house because they have been with so-and-so and you haven't. No, you cannot have a sleepover with your cousins because of COVID and auntie and uncle work outside of the home. No, you can't get together with your buddies for a camp out or sleepover. No, you can't go to the baseball clinic you've been planning on for months because it's in New Hampshire. And even though you will have a mask, it's with other kids from an area you are not from. No, you can't see your friends from Brattleboro because it will open up our bubble. No, you can't go for a ride with her or go to her house because they have had gatherings. Hold on, I'm not done. It's no, 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 all the time. We have been at this for several months. We have become creative. We have done lots of family things. There is only so much I can offer as a parent and maintain healthy emotional psyche. Kids need activity and socializing at a level that allows them connection and growth. However, that is not the intent of this letter. I will speak for my own kids when I say it is getting to a depressive state, and that it leaves parents doing this crazy balancing act of mental health versus the real risk of contracting COVID. As I said, my days are spent saying no, and my nights are spent wondering if I am doing the right thing. All of this is wearing the mental health concerns are very real. Some kids love science, some love to read, some love to hunt. My kids love sports, and for months, I've been giving the message that sports need to be secondary. And while I still believe that, I am noticing a decline in my children's drive and motivation for not just sports, but everything. My child said it best. It is so much of who I am. I don't know what else to do. And while I have provided lots of opportunity to redefine and explore, it is a difficult task as a child to redefine yourself. So I write this as a plea to come up with a plan that gets kids back to some sort of structured activity as soon as possible. Regardless if education instruction is remote or in person, I am not even talking about competing. I'm just talking about activity. The use of the public high school gym could be key to providing this outlet for kids involved in sports. While the gym is not open, I am hoping that can change. Now that the governor has given some guidance on this issue, I am hopeful that the staff and the board can be solution oriented and come up with a plan instead of reasons to say no. Please find a way to say yes, yes. I fear if this goes on much longer, we will have a much bigger problem than a minimal risk of COVID. We are on our way to isolate withdrawn, unmotivated, depressed children. And what that comes risky behaviors such as sneaking out to see friends, substance abuse, defiant tendencies, suicidal ideation. These are real, and we have been at this long enough for kids to start exhibiting the full emotional impact of COVID. If a plan to utilize the gym does not come about, I will tell you that parents are beginning to explore other options that bring us to other towns outside of our community. It feels risky to go to other towns' gyms or rec centers, but when we are left with a choice of a child who won't leave their room depressed and withdrawn, and the only thing that gets them going is the excitement of shooting hoops somewhere, guess what choice we will make? It seems safer alternative to open our public school gym with the same kids they go to school with and in our own community. Other towns are doing it and doing it safely, following the guidelines. Our gym is huge, and it is a great resource in our community that for too long has been underutilized. During a time where we have taken their friends, taken their family, redefined their school, and seemingly continue to take things away from them to help us all safe, to help keep them all safe. This seems like a gesture that could have such positive impact. I acknowledge it would involve some work, but I think it would provide such reprieve to a group of kids that thrive on activity. In doing so, we would have control over exposure, numbers, and how it unfolds, as opposed to people going to another gym or town. Thank you for reading and for your consideration. Respectfully, Tammy Nystrom. Lynn, is there anyone else? No? Okay.
Can I ask a question here?
We're gonna have it on the agenda if you want to just wait for me to get there. Is that okay?
I'm not sure what you're saying. Are we on the item 4?
No, we are on communication and public comments, and we've just ended that, and we're gonna go to new business, to winter sports, and then that would give a good opportunity for board members to speak. So if we don't have anybody else from the community that would like to speak, I would like to move on to new business for discussion. And it is winter sports and activities while in remote instruction, what the model looks like.
Molly, I would like
David?
to offer a motion.
Okay,
And Molly, that motion is observing all appropriate protocols that the Bellows Falls Union High School Board direct that the Holland Gymnasium be open for basketball practice as soon as possible.
David, repeat that.
Thank you, Molly. My motion is observing all relevant protocols that the Bellows Falls Union High School Board direct that the Holland Gymnasium be opened for basketball practice as soon as possible.
Second.
Observing all relevant Bellows Falls Union High School protocols.
Okay, Molly, good so far. That the
To
Bellows
start
Falls,
basketball practice as soon as possible.
yes, that the Bellows Falls Union High School Board direct that the Holland Gymnasium be opened for basketball practice as soon as possible, or ASAP for short.
There's a motion made and seconded, and Stephen Fine, now is your time for a question.
With all due respect to my mentor, Mr. Clark, that motion is totally meaningless, because what does as soon as possible really mean? My understanding is that the fundamental problem at the moment has to do with the basketball season and the basketball team, and that they have to have a certain number of practices in order to be able to play. And I'm not fully aware of all of that stuff. But it seems to me, setting aside all of these protocols that Mr. Clark is talking about, are there very concrete steps that we can take to protect the school and to protect the kids and the teachers and everybody else involved here, to allow the basketball season to go ahead and to flourish? Now, this item came onto the agenda because I assume that the administration has some kind of proposal to make about it, and I sure would like to hear what that is. But whatever it may be, I would like to think that every conceivable possibility has been considered in whatever position the administration takes. And it seems to me to just go ahead and adopt a motion that says, oh, we're going to do this as soon as possible, could be 2023, for heaven's sakes. So something a little closer and a little clearer seems to be more appropriate.
Molly?
Deb,
I agree with Mr. Fine. David's motion is very loose and does not give a specific. I would have asked for a friendly amendment that it is opened effective December 29, 2020, which would allow them, because I am of the understanding, if they don't get enough practices in, I believe it's 10, they will miss out the first 4 games if they aren't allowed to start practicing immediately in order to get enough practice time in. I would prefer that date. I do not believe that David's motion is sufficient to the need.
Are you asking to amend that motion?
I would like to ask David if he would accept a friendly amendment to change the date from as soon as possible to 12/29/2020.
May I respond, Molly?
Yes, please.
I would certainly be willing to accept the friendly amendment or to withdraw my motion to have it remade. However, the purpose of my language was to acknowledge the fact that we do need to observe all safety protocols around the containment of COVID-19. Furthermore, I do not know, without hearing from administration, if they have coaching that is good to go as of tomorrow night, which I believe is the 29th. And that was the as soon as possible part. However, at least for the purposes of current discussion, I would like to accept Deb's friendly amendment.
Thank you, David.
Okay,
Molly, you
Yes.
have Jack and Margot waiting.
okay. And I would like to call on administration first. Chris Hodgins had his hand up and I'd like to hear what he thinks before we move much further. The one thing that I am going to say is that I was told that it was up to Chris Pratt and myself to decide whether there were sports or not. And that's why we're having this discussion, because that is not correct. We voted as a board to make a decision about school and openings and closings, and it was not up to Chris or myself to counteract that vote that we made. So we are here tonight discussing what you are going to do as a board, because we technically shut the school down until January 11th. We closed school. I'm sorry, but I don't know what day it closed before Christmas. And school was closed until January 11th. So the question was brought to me as your board chair, what do you think we should do? And the truth of the matter is, when you go by the book, and as your leader, that's what I'm supposed to do. We voted as a board to close the school down. When we vote to go remote, we vote to not have anyone in the school. I'm not sitting here telling you, guys, none of you guys know me well enough to know how much I love basketball. And I hardly ever miss a game. I travel to see kids play, and my kid isn't even playing. I'm the one with the terrier dog in my basement, ready to go put it on, but I'm not allowed to because you can't go in the school. But it's not about what I want. It's about what we did as a board. So sorry I took all your time, Chris, but you're next.
Okay, so let me just fill in some of the gaps and a little bit of the backstory. Yes, Jason Terry is correct. On the 22nd of December was when the governor declared that we would be able to start practicing as early as the 22nd, which is a Saturday and the Saturday after Christmas. As soon as we got that information, we reached out to the VPA to find out if we could practice while we were in remote. And the answer was, if the state puts us in remote, then no. If you as a district decided to go fully remote and your boards made that decision, then it's up to the boards to decide whether or not practice is going to happen while you are in full remote. So that's why this is on the agenda right now, because it isn't up to Molly. It's not up to Chris Pratt. It's not up to me. It's not up to the coaches, Ian Fonfelder. The board has to make that decision. I will say this much. And I don't disagree with the spirit of all of the advocacy for starting practice as soon as possible. I will have to say, there are certain things presented in facts that I'm not aware of. Like I know of no high school that has opened its gym based on any applicable guidelines, at least prior to practices starting. There may be some rec areas that are doing it, but there are no high schools that I know of that have opened their facilities, because that would have been contrary to the guidance that we have from the AOA. But in any event,
Correct.
I think what the board needs to consider is if we have taken a position that it is better and safer and more prudent to not have students together in math classrooms, in English classrooms, in any classrooms, does authorizing basketball practice during that time kind of run contrary to that decision and that thinking? But that's some of the background on this, and that's why this is on the agenda now.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So I just want to make sure we all know what we're doing. Right now, there is a motion on the floor. And I wish somebody would tell me what it is, but I do know that the end of it says that we would like to start basketball practice in the Bellows Falls Union High School gym on 12/29. As long as we're following all the protocols to open the gym. Jack?
Can I say one more thing to that, Molly?
Yes.
We have done a lot of meeting and prep to get to the place to get ready to start. I'm not sure that we've got everything in place to start in less than 24 hours. So I just want to put that out there. I will also mention that if we started on the 11th, which is our first back in-person day, it is true that we would miss the first 2 weeks of games, but I want to note that we would still be able to have 14 games based on the schedule that we would run. And that's more games than anyone except maybe football, because they played 2 times a week, but I think it's more games than any of our fall teams played and had very successful seasons. So I'm not here to take away any opportunities from any students, but I just want you to know that we can get our 10 practices in if we start practicing on the 11th and still play a 14-game season out of what would never have been more than 20. So in a regular season.
Chris, I've just got one question. I guess I thought with all the COVID crap that maybe the VPA was going to tell us we didn't need those 10 practices before we start like they used to, but that is still true?
They have not said that.
Okay.
So
I just
we're
wanted
still-
to get that out, and I wanted you to
we're
say
still-
that, that's all.
Yeah, we're still doing the 10 practices.
Okay. Jack Breyer, you're next.
Okay, I appreciate all the advocacy of parents and students that would love to play basketball, because who doesn't love to play basketball? However, I think the most important thing is it safe? And the our administration.
I can't hear
think
you,
that
Jack.
it would be improper. I'm sorry, can you hear me better now? I cannot tell.
Yes.
All right. I'm saying that I find it really improper for boards to micromanage their administration, just as a general rule. And this is no exception. We have Mr. Pratt, Ms. Carey, Chris Hodgson, John Broadley are here. And part of their mandate is to ensure the health and safety of the people in our building, to ensure that we don't have liability issues, and that's their gig. And I don't think that it's ever proper for boards to tell the administration to open up if they have any concerns about health and safety issues.
Okay,
No problem. We can do this. So I need to hear that. And I do think it's important for our students, as enthusiastic as they are, to understand that this is not a case about their health and safety. As much as I care about their health and safety, young people tend not to get critically ill. But you know what? There are 400 people right now in Dartmouth Hitchcock in the hospital who are critically ill, and there aren't that many beds left for anybody that wants to that has a heart attack or has a fall or is in a car crash, because there are so many people in the hospital right now with this disease. They probably didn't get it from another senior. They probably got it from their kids, their friends, their grandchildren. Are people
having a
that
real
attend
hard time hearing you.
school. And well, I'm sorry for that. My point simply is, absent a go-ahead, Mr. Pratt or Mr. Hodgson, I would be deeply reluctant to open the school for any purpose that's not academic and not recommended by them. That's all I'm saying.
David Clark.
Thank you, Molly. Am I mic'd?
Yes.
Okay. I never actually spoke to my motion. And as made, that motion had two key elements to it. The first key element was the notion that we would observe all relevant safety protocols. And the second part of that motion was as soon as possible. And the reason I chose the as soon as possible language, and I take note that we're now talking about a Tuesday opening, but the reason I chose the as soon as possible language is to answer Jack's question. It did allow administration reasonable latitude to ensure that the building and the staff were ready to begin practice. And that was the motion as initially made, and I take note of the fact we're now debating a motion to open it tomorrow night. Now, what I want to say is that I happen to believe that when this board directed made the motion to direct that we close for a week of remote instruction after the vacation, that's exactly what that language meant, which is a week of remote instruction. And I would maintain to the members of this board and members of the public that holding practices during a period of remote instruction do not contravene the spirit and intent and language of that motion to close for a week of remote instruction. So I certainly would be willing to vote in the affirmative of the motion that's made with the amendment, although I would be more comfortable with the language of the motion as it was originally made, which both took note of the importance of this COVID safety protocols, as well as granting the administration sufficient discretion to open that practice in an orderly fashion on a date that they felt that they could do so.
Priscilla, do you have a hand up? Can't hear you.
But Colin has had his up longer than I have. Would you like to hear him first or?
Oh, ladies first. I didn't see him, but we'll get him.
Molly, I want to just mention that Margot has had her hand up for quite a while.
Thank you. Margot's been the one before pretty much everybody.
Okay, Margot, you're next. Your whole team's on you.
Hopefully you all can hear me. My internet connection is very unstable this evening, so I apologize in advance if I break up. I have several thoughts about this topic and want to just first off say that no matter what decision we end up making and the administration makes, and it's not an easy one. And I feel like it's about making decisions about hard choices with no great answer to begin with. And I say this because, I feel like we don't have the answers about COVID, how it's spreading, what are the risks that we are actually exposing ourselves to. There's a risk in every decision we make, whether it's hybrid models, all remote, not remote at all. Do we allow sports? And it's about what we feel like is going to be the least, or possibly the least risky. In this case, in terms of starting sports earlier than the week off of remote learning, that why we have the building closed for academics, I start to think about what are students doing, or what are families choosing to do instead. And I think we've heard some expressions of students are already seeking out other places to play while they are not playing in our facility. And that starts to concern me more even than playing in our facility. I think we have some level of oversight and some level of management when people from our own community are staying within the community. It's still risky. It still has to be by choice, but it seems less risky than letting families go do whatever they're going to go do, and we have no idea what's going on. And then they all come back the week of the 11th and possibly have been exposed to more communities and more sources. So there's that level of me that says it's a week earlier, that we're possibly looking at, maybe a little bit longer than a week. And, I guess I'm in favor of saying, let's do this in a managed way. I think the other thing that I think about is, the points about, I am very much in support of, it can't just be a mandate from the board saying, yes, we're going to allow it. It has to be that the administration, the school is ready to oversee the management of this. Are the coaches in place? Are all the protocols laid out? So I think David's point of that it has to be at a place, like we can't just say, all right, it's open tomorrow and it's all going to be fine. We just have to make sure that all the pieces, we, meaning the school, the administration, has to make sure that they're able to get everything lined up and not be rushed into making that decision just because it's available. So that was a long-winded of saying that I think it's a risky thing no matter what we do. And there's a part of me that feels like it's a little less risky maybe to have the supervised opening of indoor sports, or at least one sport indoors for this time period. Thank you.
Colin James.
Thanks, Molly. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to make sure I don't have the greatest service either. So a couple of things. I am in favor of this. Because a lot of points, a lot of topics were brought up this evening. A lot of points were given. It's been long and hard for all of us. And I do believe that, our students do need to get out and, not only exercise, but the sports aspect of it. So a couple of things real quick. I'm not going to be too long because I know there's other questions out there as well. So if we miss, correct me if I'm wrong, we need 10 practices. And if we don't get those in, we would miss the first 2 weeks of games. So my question is, if no other school has their gym open, and please somebody correct me if I'm wrong, if no other schools have their gyms open, how would we miss the first 2 weeks of games? I guess I'm confused a little because if we need those 10 practices in, but if no other school's doing it, then
I
are we even?
can speak that. What
Sure.
I was talking about was prior to the 26th, there were
Okay.
no basketball practices happening. It's there's some belief that some rec areas have been opened up, but I can tell you, based on the topic we're talking about, which is high school basketball programs, none of those would have been done before the 26th. And I honestly don't know which, if any, programs had a practice this past Saturday or practiced today. I don't have the answer to that.
Okay.
So,
okay. I mean, is there a way, not right now, but I mean, is there a way to maybe kind of find out? And I'm sure you're going to. I'm not. So the other thing is, again, I'm in support of this. So Chris, we don't know what other schools are doing. I mean, the other thing is, could we maybe be the first example in the state to launch this?
well, so if you're talking about our schedule, it doesn't really matter like what's happening throughout the state. The way they've configured the schedule is they've kind of regionalized them. I'm not here to dismiss in any way the question you're getting at, Colin, which is if we get our 10 practices in and nobody on our schedule has done that, then we're still not playing. That's the point that you're getting at. But I haven't pursued that information, so I don't have that information for you.
Okay. My last thing is, again, I am in support of this, but I do firmly believe, as some of my other colleagues have said, that, you know, me as a sitting board member, I kind of look to the administration to make a final decision. I know, it's frustrating times. You know, really the board's roles are policy and budget. Again, I do look for the administration's thoughts on this, but I am fully in support of this. If we can do it, let's get the ball rolling. Literally, let's get the ball rolling. So that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Molly, may I interject real quick?
No.
No,
not a board
Priscilla
member.
is a board member and she's had her hand up. We gotta let her speak.
Okay. The reason we closed, excuse me, the reason we closed the school was because there could be traveling, there could be students going other places, and that includes our team members. If they have any traveling at all, they can't be practicing anyway. Chris has told us that starting on the 11th, they still can have a full season for basketball, basically.
Well, I just want to make that clear, Priscilla, before you continue. A full regular season is 20 games. 14 games is not a full season, but it's more games than the fall teams got, for whatever that's worth.
That's what I meant. And thank you for clarifying that, Chris. I appreciate that. The nurses went above and beyond to convince the boards that we needed this week of remote with the schools closed. They said they were the medical authorities, and the board has voted that the schools would be closed for remote. If we think that the basketball can play, then we should reopen the school. There is no reason to have remote if it's safe for those students to go in there, because if they're going other places and bringing it back, they are in just as much danger of infecting people and sharing it and making it so that our school cannot continue and go on and come back from remote. Other towns, you know, if they're talking about going to Rutland, excuse me, that's not a good choice on their part. And if they went to Rutland, then they shouldn't be coming back and being allowed to come and play, you know, in ours either without being tested. Who is going to test the students? Because every student that comes into our school is tested. A nurse has to be there and test them. All of that protocols would have to be followed and all of that stuff. So to do it early, when we voted for remote, you know, the board, unless they're going to rescind their vote on doing remote next week, they should not be considering having other teams come into the building because that was our vote. And technically, this vote would be against the vote that we took. I don't know who else is talking, but someone else was talking, so it distracted me.
Is there any other board members who would like to speak?
Molly, I would like to ask people who aren't speaking to please mute themselves. There's a particular gentleman up in the corner who keeps speaking and it's talking over other people, please.
Lynn, do you see any hands up? I'm trying to see, but
Brenda has her hand up.
Brenda,
Yeah, I have.
you're on.
Okay, I do agree that policy and finances and budget is the board. And I agree that the administration has, we should not strong arm or seek to strong arm their decisions. But also I believe that we had to be voted by people in our community to be on the board. So to bring their voice to the board, I don't think is a bad thing. And what I observed in the comments and also in that letter, we were very quick to accept the nurse's letter. So I think that this other letter should be given due consideration. And I've been a parent and I'm a grandparent. And I understand some of what that person was saying. Even if you talk about the academics, say you don't allow this activity in the gym, how effective is the academics going to be if the kids are depressed and withdrawn and upset? I mean, if you can get them to a healthy balance is what the letter and what the comments have been that have been directed towards the athletics. I don't think it's so much about the competition and about the sports itself as about the well-being of the students. And my question is it possible for the gym straight in, straight out with proper procedure?
Go ahead, Chris.
The answer on that is yes. And we already know what our policy, what our procedures, our safety procedures will be once practice starts. And that's part of it.
Lynn, anybody else?
Deb Wright?
Deb?
Molly, I've just been advised that 2 high schools just started their practice today. One is Rutland. The other one is MSJ.
Me too. I was told the same thing.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I put that in there. It was from someone who wasn't on the board, so. Thank you.
Mr. Clark.
I think we can add Brattleboro to that list, Molly.
I don't know that that's true, David.
Okay, so.
Can I just make a point of order real quick? Jack Breyer did leave. I just want to make sure there's still a quorum. And Molly, this is directed to you real quick. I am on call, so at any point my phone does go off, I do have to leave as well. So I just want to make sure we have a quorum, that's all.
Okay.
I would like to move the question.
Okay, I was just going to do that.
So Molly, I just want to know, I'm not certain
have 6?
we are ready to start on the 29th. I'm just putting that out there.
Do we have 6 members here, Molly?
Yes, you do.
Yes, I do.
That's the part of the motion that's making me, going to what you just said, Chris, this is Margot, that makes me uncomfortable with the motion. I liked the aspect of, I understand why the as soon as possible was vague and therefore not necessarily the best way to go. But by saying to start tomorrow also seems like if the administration, who is actually, working to
Margot,
make things happen. Yes.
Deb Wright called the question, so we're going to get a point of order here in any second now from somebody. So the way to reword that motion at this point is vote it down and write it again. But right now, the question has been called, so I don't even know if I can tell you what the question is at this point, but there is a motion on the floor to David Clark. Do you know what it is?
Yes, I do, Molly. The motion on the floor is that observing all relevant protocols, the Bellows Falls Union High School directs that the Holland Gymnasium be open on December 29th for basketball practice.
Thank you.
And I want to add that was Deb's friendly amendment, which I accepted. I'm quite willing, if we get there, to redraft it.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're voting on observing all safety protocols for Bellows Falls Union High School to be open on 12/29 for basketball practice. If you're comfortable with that motion or not, here comes the vote. David Clark. You got on mic, buddy. David Clark, please unmute.
Deb, can you?
Try one more time.
What are you saying, David?
Pretty quick, I'm not gonna let you vote.
Yes.
There we go. Priscilla.
No, we don't know how many are traveling.
Brenda. Gotta unmute.
My vote is yes, but my question is, if I say yes, am I locked to that date? Because I would want the date to be when the
You are,
administration.
that is what the motion
That's the
says.
date.
Okay, all right. So then in that respect, it would be no.
Okay. Colin James.
Yes.
Deb Wright.
Yes.
Margot.
No, like Brenda, I have the concern about a specific date, but support the opening.
Well, guess what, guys? You've just made the chair's job hard. Because you have a tie.
If
And
I
I'm gonna
may.
vote. What's that?
Sorry. Go ahead, Molly. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. Sorry.
Is Jack Byers, he back yet?
No, it's a birthday party. He's not going to be back.
Oh, yeah.
You can always do another vote, Molly, on something else. Different one.
I'm gonna vote no because I don't like the way it is. And I would ask for someone to come up with a better plan. What I really would like to see us do is I would like to see us let the administration make this decision. I don't know why we are making this decision at a board level. And I think that with the administration being able to make that decision, they know that they have done everything they can to make sure that everybody's safe. And I think my real hangup is, and it isn't anything about the sports, it's about that we have 300 kids that aren't coming to class. And I wish they were coming to class, but as a board, we voted for them not to go to class. And they're not having math class or English or anything else. And I'm struggling with that a little bit. I'm a mother of a kid who played 3 sports all the way through high school. I like my sports, but somehow we've gotten this really muddy.
Molly,
And-
if I may, I think all the coaches are online on the Zoom call. You can speak to them and ask what they consider and would be appropriate.
I agree. Hearing from the coaches would be nice.
Okay, timeout.
Also, Molly, can we hear whether they can do anything virtually?
I agree.
Mr. Hodgson. Chris Hodgson.
Looks like you.
Probably not in terms of the virtual piece.
You don't want to have basketball in
Probably
the
not.
kitchen?
Yeah. No, I just want to emphasize, because there's a lot of struggle with the board here, and I think if the coaches are interested in speaking, I think that would be great. But
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Chris.
Right. The reason it's before you is because we went fully remote. We asked the VPA if we could have practices when we're fully remote, and they said if the board decided to go fully remote, then it needed to be a board decision. Let us do that. What's that? You couldn't hear me? Can you hear me?
Just barely, Chris.
Let me kill the video. Is that any better?
A little bit.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Okay, this is like
Hear
an
me?
awful commercial.
I guess not.
I'm gonna move
Okay.
to Coach Holler.
All I wanted to say was it's before the board because the board decided to go remote, and the VPA said then the board has to decide what's practice. So, okay.
Coach Holler, you're up. Got on mute though.
John, they're looking for input.
He's getting it.
You, John Holler.
Yes.
You're muted.
Okay, we got it.
Whoa. Can anybody hear me?
That's hilarious.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
Come on, Chris, easy, buddy. We're not going to have any difficulty handling the appropriate protocols in a practice with 12 kids.
Then I hope to God you don't ever need to go to the hospital.
What's happened?
I'm not sure.
Molly, can you?
I got you.
Someone had just joined and they didn't mute, but I muted them. So you're all set. Sorry for the interruption.
That's okay. Are you listening to John Holler, your boys basketball coach now? Yes, just not in agreement. Okay, Chris.
Yes.
In a gym with 12 players in it and 6 hoops, we're not going to have any difficulty socially distancing and appropriately educating our players over a reasonable time frame. At some point, if competitions are going to be held and players are going to actually play the game, distancing is going to become irrelevant at that point, just due to the nature of the game. But in terms of, and there's no way of predicting what's going to happen around the state anyway. So if the question is, can we start and observe the appropriate protocols in that facility? Yes, we can do that. And we can make it a legitimate educational experience for the players. My biggest concern about all of this is that we're asking our student athletes to actually compete. This is not intramurals. It's a varsity athletic experience. Also, the schedule has changed considerably from what it was a year ago when I accepted the position of boys varsity basketball coach. We're a Division III school. We have a majority of our games left on the schedule if we start 10 days after the 11th that are against Division II and Division I opponents, most of whom will have been in the gym a considerably longer period of time than we've been.
And I think that we put our student athletes at risk in that situation as well. My concern as a coach becomes being able to legitimately coach my kids. I don't think that you can hold somebody accountable on the floor without having acknowledged, taught them properly what it is you're expecting them to be able to accomplish while they're out there. That's my job, is to make sure that they're properly prepared for that. So I've got to have adequate time to be able to do that. If you say that we start on the 11th and we miss 2 days because of weather, 2 practice days because of weather, that next game automatically disappears, because the time frame is that tight between the 11th and when we would open on the 22nd with Brattleboro at home. So I think it's very doable, and I think it should happen. But I think it should happen also around when the administration feels that they have the capabilities to disinfect and do the things and have the personnel available to be able to properly do the things that they have to do in between practice sessions, because it's not just about my varsity team. It's about, four teams in total. So I think it's doable. I think it's important. Can I be ready in 24 hours? I'd like a little bit more time than that, to tell you the truth. I was anticipating we were going to start to the 11th, and I have a full-time career other than this. So, but that's what any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them around that. But I think it's eminently doable. And I think that we can accomplish a great deal while maintaining the appropriate protocols until the state or the VPA determines, okay, now it's safe to touch each other, however they want to put that.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
I have a question for him.
Okay.
My question is, you mentioned playing Division I and Division II teams, but I thought we were going to a regional program where we were only playing regionally.
Well,
can I answer that question for you? I'm happy to answer that question because I've reviewed the schedule several times. Yes, Chris, they have arranged for a regional revamping. My presumption is that's around travel. We do have games scheduled against Brattleboro's a Division I school, Mount Anthony's a Division I school, Rutland's a Division I school, Burton is a Division I school. I've been a coach in the boys basketball program since 1989. It will be the most challenging schedule, and that's when we were in Division II, that the boys basketball program has faced since 1992. So it's a reality that those teams are on our schedule.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
David, do you have a question for the coach?
Molly, if there are additional questions, we should hear them, but I'm prepared to remake a motion when the chair is ready to entertain it.
Okay, I would like to hear from the coaches, so I'm going to go to.
Because Todd Wells is on too, so I don't know if he wants to talk.
I got it, Chris. Todd Wells, yeah, I see you're here. Would you like to speak, please?
Hey,
Todd
thanks,
is
Molly.
the coach.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Great. I just want to thank all of you for, I really appreciate you taking an hour of your schedules and time to have this conversation about our student athletes and taking it seriously. Because a few months ago, wasn't sure that we would even get to this point. So just having this conversation and having being able to coach our kids, I'm really excited about. So thank you for that. And I do believe that the school has done really well with putting stuff in place for us to do it safely, and it's probably the safest place. As far as the timing and how the scheduling works out, I'll have to defer to administration to when that's best for us to start. Thank you.
Nate Haskell. Is Nate still the JV
Good
coach?
evening. Yep. Yeah, good evening. I would, just to thank, like Todd said, everyone for the time and effort. And, I'm certainly on board with Coach Holler and everything that he's done and prepared us for. And, the administration's been great. So again, I'm completely on board with, coaches decisions and wants and what the administration wants to do. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a girls JV coach online? I don't see that we do. Can anybody help me with that? Okay, I'm gonna take that as a no. Thank you, all the coaches.
Molly, can we have a medical opinion too? We closed based on a medical opinion. Do we have a medical?
Let's see. Do I have a school nurse here? I'm looking.
I'm looking as well, Molly.
Thank you.
I don't see one.
No. Does anybody want me to pursue getting one of the nurses to speak?
I would like to hear what they have to say.
Chris Pratt, could you try to get a hold of one of them and see if they would get on the Zoom as I let David try for another motion?
Yeah, I'll see what I can do.
Thank you. David, you're up.
Okay, Molly, I'm going to make a motion, and if and when there's a second, I would like to have the opportunity to speak to it. My motion is that, try this again. Observing all safety protocols that the Bellows Falls Union High School Board direct its administration to open the Holland Gymnasium for basketball practice as soon as possible. When there's a second, I would like to speak to that motion.
I'll second it for the purpose of discussion, but if I can just real quick, can we just have a point of order of what the original, just the original, how many voted for it? Just a quick rundown, real quick. Did it pass?
So
or
you were.
It did pass. Because Molly, I just remember saying, you said it was tied.
It was 3-4 and the noes beat it.
What have I been gerrymandered out of the voting? Is that the story?
I didn't. I asked if I missed anybody, and we missed you, buddy.
The story of my life.
Didn't mean to. Speak up.
I'm voting yes.
Too late. That vote's gone. We're on another motion. You got another chance to vote.
Hold on a minute. I don't understand what's going on here, okay? I've only got about 12 years of college, so I really don't understand the whole picture here. What's going on? We had a motion. We adopted it. Is that the story?
No, it got voted down.
It got voted down? Not according to my calculation. I got 5-3.
I have David Clack is a yes. Colin is a yes. Deb is a yes. Priscilla, Brenda, Margot, and Molly is a no. And we checked the screen and we did not see you when we were voting.
Is that my responsibility? Or is that the chair's responsibility?
You weren't there.
I wasn't here.
Lynn, was he there? We checked. We went down through roll call. So Chris Pratt or David Clark, help me out here.
Well, I just want you to know Whitney Patterson, our school nurse, will be joining the meeting shortly.
Okay, your volume's got a wicked problem, Chris. David Clark.
I would like to speak to my motion, Molly. That motion, which was to observe all safety protocols, that the Bellows Falls Union High School direct its administration to open the Holland Gymnasium for basketball practice as soon as possible, grants complete discretion to the Union High School administration, I presume in consultation with central administration, as to when that appropriate moment occurs. And I would say that was implicit in the motion that I initially introduced a couple of days ago. However, it may have been a little bit too subtle, but now I just want to make the point absolutely clearly that administration gets the call on it. And I do not see any conflict between this motion and the concept that we will be having remote instruction for the week which follows the traditional holiday break.
Priscilla, we now have a school nurse on. Whitney Patterson, would you like to speak to this? We've been asked if you would speak.
I can say a few words. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
So I'm up at the high school, and I've been listening to the banter back and forth, and I can, as a parent of kids in the district, I can definitely see both sides of this argument. I want more than anything for my kids to be back in school around their friends, just for their social, emotional well-being. I don't think I'm going to get any trophies this year for Teacher of the Year. So there's that too. But in regards to the sports, there was a real strong reason why we kind of fought to have the kids out that extra week. People are traveling, people are being visited. And and when I say we wanted people to do that, it's not that we are encouraging it, but we knew it was going to happen. We expect it to happen. And part of the problem that we've had, the collective we being anyone involved in COVID and screening, is the fact that screening is based on self-reported information. And let's face it, people aren't always 100% truthful. And sometimes it's an omission of the entire truth as well. We find that a lot too. People think that they were okay doing something when it actually wasn't really okay. And we're running into that a lot. And a lot of what we as nurses, I think it would be safe to say that we're doing is kind of going with the punches. Every day we're finding a new situation and we're figuring out how to deal with it and how to work around it. And our primary goal is just to keep everybody in the school community safe, therefore keeping the surrounding, greater community safe. If we were to start the season, a week early, I would really, as Coach was saying, that's a huge space. There's a real potential for even doing drills, people being 6, 10, 12 feet away. You can keep the gym doors open. They're going to be running around. They're going to be hot. They're going to be sweaty, get some fresh air in there. The only thing that I would really want if we started early was, to really, really be diligent about the screening. Where did you go over the holidays? Did anybody come to visit? Are you ill? Is anyone in your home ill? And I know some of the questions as far as the screening have changed as well. The state doesn't want us to get too personal, on, what's allowed and what's not allowed. But, I'd really want those, especially those initial screenings, to be really, really, really specific and really kind of dig around. And we're doing our best day to day to keep everybody healthy and safe. And I think we've done a pretty darn good job in the district. So you know, I think it's good for their mental and emotional and social well-being. And I'll be honest, I'm probably guessing a couple of these ball players, you know, especially with winter sports coming up, especially basketball players have probably been doing some pickup up at the rec or at their homes. But that's considered their own little pod. You know, these kids are near each other all the time anyway. As mentioned, you know, the bigger concern comes in when we start playing other teams. And again, it's self-reported information. Are we sure that these other teams are being completely honest about symptoms from other team players, other teammates? We have no idea where they're coming from or who's traveled. It's a crapshoot, but I mean, at what point, I think, and the nurses, we have discussed this ad nauseum, you know, at what point do we say, you know, we've gone far enough? You know, because you're always going to think, all right, good, we've done our screening, we're covered. And then you find out 2 days later, oh man, you know, somebody went to the mall, or somebody went to, you know, Bass Pro Shops in New Hampshire. And it's crazy. So I think it's going to be up to the players and the families as far as their degree of comfort. And we're really going to have to drill it into them. Like, we really need you to be honest here. We really need your help here, because the only way we're going to get to play, just like with fall sports, the only way we're going to get to play is if everybody's honest.
I have a follow-up question.
Thank you, Whitney. Yes, Priscilla.
Molly, yeah, I guess my big concern too is this week. You know, if we say as soon as possible, you know, how are you feeling about, like, okay, if they started tomorrow or the next day, there's no notice, and where have they been going? Are you sure that you would want them to start this week, or even putting it off till like next week, when there could be, you know, at least a little bit of pullback by the students? I guess that's where I'm wondering how you would feel as a nurse on that part.
Well, and that's a good question. But again, that comes down to being completely honest with us. Like, you know, say for instance, on a team of 12 kids, we've got, you know, 2 or 3 that come back and say, hey, you know, on that first day of screening, you know, I went to Connecticut, you know, for Christmas. Then you say, okay, I get it. You weren't supposed to, but I get it. So now you personally would have to wait that X number of days to come back. You know, either test out or wait the quarantine period.
Anyone else have any questions for Whitney?
Thank you.
Lynn, can you help me? Is there anybody with a hand up? Chris is shaking his head no. David Clark.
I just simply want to comment that I think that administration in exercising its discretion certainly would be consulting the nurses as to whether they consider the situation safe or not. So I'm putting this out here preemptively because I want to make it absolutely clear that if we're going to task administration with opening as soon as possible, I think that it's an implicit understanding that administration would be consulting their medical professionals. And if that's not the case, then I would ask Chris Hostin if he could just, you know, thumbs up or thumbs down here, because you are having some audio problems tonight, Chris. Message received. Thank you.
Is there any discussion, any more discussion on the motion that is on the floor?
Could you repeat the motion?
I'm going to try.
Can I offer an
Clark is-
amendment?
Okay,
I'd like
let
to
me read
amend it.
Priscilla.
Okay, I'll let you read it first.
Let me read the motion, please. Observing all protocols to open the Bellows Falls Union High School for basketball practice per the administration. As soon, or, okay, David, word it the way you worded it, but you had as soon as possible in there somewhere.
I'll try it from the top. Observing all relevant safety protocols that the Bellows Falls Union High School direct its administration to open the Holland Gymnasium for basketball practice as soon as possible.
And that was seconded by Colin. Priscilla, what would you like to do?
I would like to amend it to, but after January 1st. That still gives you 10 days till that first game. And it also gives time here for them to make sure that all students are aware of it and all students are able to have some time before it starts. And that still leaves it up to the discretion of the administration that they can do later than that if they are seeing that, you know, and having looked at students and looked at them, that
Okay,
they would
please,
have time
please,
to
before you discuss
approach.
it,
Oh, I
let's
was
get the
speaking to
amendment
the-
on. Let's have the amendment one more time, and you need a second on your amendment.
Okay. But after January 1st.
So
As
you
soon as
wanna do-
possible, but after January 1st, as soon as possible after January 1st.
Coach Holler, could you answer a question for me? I was under the impression one time that we could not practice 7 days a week. Is that true, or can we?
Yes, I do. I believe that there's a policy that prevents any practices on Sundays, which means 6 days a week would be the maximum around that. You know, just to segue for a moment, I'm in complete agreement that we have to make sure that we have the sanitization, all the things that need to be done around the gymnasium in terms of groups coming and going, because it's not just my team, it's all 4 teams. So you have to have the proper personnel in there to scrub the place or spray it, you know, and that's the administration's job around scheduling those people. If that takes to, you know, January 1st to do that, that's, you know, an obvious, yes, that's the way that ought to happen.
Thank you. I understand that. I just wanted you to tell us that we couldn't practice on Sunday because I was pretty sure that was true.
That's correct.
So,
We cannot.
so
And I
that would not give us the 10 days that 10 practices that we need.
Well, if you add it to, you know, when we would open, I think that I'd have to check the schedule because I don't have the exact opening date. My assumption was we weren't starting to the 11th, so the first four games were gone. So I don't even know what the original start date was supposed to be.
Okay, perfect. We have an amendment. Do we have a second on Priscilla? Yes, Priscilla?
Can they practice more than once a day? Can they have one in the morning and one at night, or is that prohibited also?
May I speak to that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Due to all the additional things that have to happen that I mentioned earlier around spraying and sanitization, practice times have been reduced this year from their normal 90 minutes to around an hour per group. So I would have to tell you that it would be almost, unless we were granted 6 a.m. practices, which in the past we've done, believe it or not, at the middle school back in the early 90s. I would say that would be impossible. Double sessions, I don't see it.
Thank you.
Love to have it happen, but don't see it.
Can I get a second to Priscilla's amendment? Or are we going back to the original motion? Lynn, do you see anything? I don't see a second on Priscilla's amendment. So I think that means we gotta go back to the original motion.
And I believe Colin called the question.
I did. My other question is, do we have a recording secretary on the Zoom with us? Because we keep seeming to have a problem with what was said and what was not said.
Everything gets recorded.
I just meant if we have one on Zoom, because usually that recording secretary would read it back. That's all I meant.
Yes, I believe we do. I gotta find her.
Nicole.
Tara?
No, Nicole's taking the notes tonight.
Nicola is not Tara, okay. Nicole, can you read the motion back?
She just said, give me a second, because she is recording it herself as well as Fact TV. So she should be popping up in a second.
Thank you. Right now, Colin has called the question, so we're just waiting for the question from our note taker.
She's looking back in her notes.
While we've got a moment, can you hear me any better?
Yes.
Wow, I feel like a player now.
Chris, okay, does David have it?
David has it.
Okay. Yes, Nicole's asked if you could read it, and she'll put it with her word to what she has written down. She's a little worried now too that it's been changed so many times. If you could read it one more time, David, it would be helpful.
I hope you'll settle for a recitation, Lynn. My motion was that observing all relevant safety protocols, that the Bellows Falls Union High School Board direct its administration to open the Holland Gymnasium for basketball practice as soon as possible.
Mhm. That's it. Yep.
And that has been seconded by Colin, and Colin has called the question, and we are now ready to vote. And I would
Correct.
like Stephen Fine to vote, please.
I'll vote yes for what I consider to be a totally useless motion, but yes, it is.
David Clark,
Yes, Molly.
Priscilla, I can't hear you, Priscilla. Just shake your head yes or no. I'm gonna skip Priscilla for a moment and come back. Brenda,
Yes.
She's here. Yeah.
Colin,
Yes.
Deb Wright,
Yes. Agree with
Margot.
Steve though.
Yes.
I'd like to go back to Priscilla.
I'm going to vote no because the school is remote and we voted to be remote, and I can't put basketball above education, although I think basketball is terribly important for students also. They both are.
Thank you. The yeses have it. We are going to start basketball practice when the administration feels that they are ready to start it. Thank you, everyone.
So while we've got the coaches there, I just want to put out, please be on the lookout for a meeting for us to schedule sometime early tomorrow morning. If you're available, watch your emails for that so that we can come up with a plan. Okay.
Molly, can I ask a question of that? Will the high school be letting us know when that date will be? Since we all now don't know when that's going to be.
We will absolutely get the word out once we know when we're starting.
Awesome, thanks.
We are going to unfinished business for discussion and action. let's go to budget review.
So Molly, I'm gonna have Flora start in regards to just a quick overview of the budget, what you're looking at, and she's just gonna do it briefly, and then Principal Hodgson will get in and review the numbers with you. I just want Flora to give everyone kind of like the same spiel overview that she's given some of the other boards in regards to the color codes and the different columns. So Flora, you wanna give that quick and we'll just hand it over to Chris?
Yes, can you please let me share my screen?
Yeah, you should have it, Flora.
It says host disabled participant sharing. Let's see again.
All right, give it a shot.
Yes, thank you. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so we met this morning, Chris Hudson and I, regarding the budget. We did a finals adjustments and reviews. The budget is still the same color coded as the first one that I did presented, which the first portion is at a light blue, will be for all employees' salaries. Second portion, which is the light peach, is all of the employees' benefits. Third portion, which is the dark orange, is all the other miscellaneous. And then the last part of the budget, which is the green, is the SU assessments. And the second tab is the overall information for us, the color codes, which is salaries, benefits, miscellaneous, and assessments. And then the budget is for FY20 and FY22. It has both informations. And the third column is the variance, which is the difference from the previous budget that was approved for FY21 and the current budget that we're presenting for FY22. As you can see, we did review the budget and we do have adjustments. So the budget right now is lower than the one that was presented for FY21. And Chris will be reviewing each of the parts of the budget and any other questions that you guys might have.
I just have a quick question, Molly, when you have a moment.
Go ahead, Con.
Flora, the finalized dates of when the budget needs to be, the proposed budget, the final date, do we have that yet?
It should be the first weeks of the January. So you could present to town by March 2nd.
Correct. Okay, so first week of January. Thank you.
I can't see anyone else, so you're gonna have to speak if you want something.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Chris said that he wanted to review the budget, but I don't hear him.
Sure, I'm just waiting for my turn.
Okay, it's your turn.
Okay, so it's your turn. You want to go for the first tab, or you just want to present our second tab?
Well, so let me just talk in general terms first, because I'm not necessarily going to go through line by line, but if people like that, that's fine. I'm going to give you the big picture. The big picture is this. You're looking at a budget that is already down by 1.7%. And to provide a little perspective, and I know that being fully attentive to our economic situation and the taxpayers' needs is a high priority, as it is every year. So I just want to point out that this budget is down by 1.7%. Typically, budgets that we prepare and get approved are typically up in the 2 to 3 or more percent. So the perspective I want to invite folks to consider is we're already down by 4 or more % from where a budget typically is. Your takeaway from that is that we've got a very, very lean budget that you are looking at. If you're looking at the comparison tab, you can see that salaries and benefits are up. Miscellaneous is really defined as all of the things that the school has control over. And that's down by 133,997, which is down on that category alone by 8.3%. So I just want to kind of use that as my entry point into this conversation, that unlike years where we have even more time to work on the budget, where there's a lot of give and take and a lot of see what this looks like, can you get us some more money here? We're coming to you with the tightest budget, quite honestly, that I've ever presented in the 16 years of being principal here. So there's not a lot of additional wiggle room. I would like to also commend the central office, because quite honestly, when I'm doing this most years, I'm trying to figure out how do I support the central office by being able to absorb increases on the WNESU budget. And they did us a huge favor this year. And as was important, as you can see, the assessments, which is essentially us being billed for the WNESU budgets, that's down by 138,115. We know that there has been a lot of legislative work and work at the state level around benefits, particularly healthcare. So we knew that was going to go up, and you see that that's up, and salaries are up in anticipation of wherever negotiations take us. So that's the big picture. Oftentimes folks want to hear from the principal about, so what was your focus for this? What are your priorities? Where are you going with the school? And I have to be honest with you, we built this budget without a particular destination in mind, except a destination that over the course of this budget will have us no longer dealing with COVID. I can't say that we won't be dealing with it at the start of the next school year. That's impossible to say, but I have plenty of optimism that by the time somewhere when we're spending from this budget, we will be able to put COVID-19 in the rearview mirror. But not knowing when that's going to be, I have not asked for any more staff. I am not cutting any staff, because we need the people that we've got in order to make things work as best we possibly can with the restrictions that we have. And having said all of that, I will open it up for questions if people have any.
Chris, this is Margot. I did have just I guess a general question. When I was going through the budget, I was definitely noting all the different line items where there are significant decreases. And I know that, and from what you just stated, that, you know, that was something that you worked very hard on. And I guess I just want to make sure, yes, we know this is going to be a tremendously hard year. Lots of them are, but this one is somewhat extraordinary we're coming into. However, I also want to make sure that you feel, as the administration, that not too much has been cut. I would hate to see some of these categories that are already lean and became significantly leaner and not have you feel comfortable with them.
I guess my answer to that is the key to an outstanding school is an outstanding staff. And that's why I made my priority on these outstanding staff members that we have. And we will find other ways, if necessary, to access resources to get anything that we need that isn't already in there. But I feel very good about the budget that we're putting in front of you. But if as time goes on, we find that we have other needs, we'll find ways to make it happen. Does that answer your question?
It does. I just want to make sure that we're not cutting too much.
No,
because,
but I will
you know,
tell
we
you,
want to make sure educational services are still at a high quality.
So you can see obviously that I didn't even go to revisiting the parking lot. I mean, this time last year, we weren't just well on our way to a major reconstruction of the driveway, the parking lot, and the wastewater management, but or the runoff management. But we felt very good about getting that funded. This is not the time for us to come to that. So it's things like that that we are deferring. And I know that instead of $500,000 for a new parking lot, for a few thousand, we can fill in potholes until the economy comes back around and we can revisit that.
Molly?
Yeah, I can't see anybody, but go ahead, David.
Okay, thank you. Well, I need to make a couple observations. First off, the reduction in the high school budget is almost entirely attributable to the reduction in the WNESU budget. So I see little actual cutting having taken place at the high school. And I'm saying that in the context of the fact that I did take a look at the budget document that Flora sent around this morning. And I noticed that there was quite an interesting trend on FY21 budget versus actual. In the salary categories, we have spent, and I don't know, Flora, if these are encumbered because we can't tell that from the budget documents that you're able to produce, but in the salary categories, we're looking at very, very large numbers, which right now exceed in most salary categories the amount that was budgeted for them in 2000.
David, I can speak to that before you get too
hold
far
on a
along.
minute, Chris, I'm not done yet. Okay. And the other part of this is that while I appreciate the fact that this budget, the budget itself is down, I think what this board needs to pay attention to is taxation. Because frankly, we're in a situation where I think that we cannot go to the voters hat in hand without at least level taxation. And I think we need to make an effort to actually reduce taxation this year. I made a stand on this last spring, which you're quite familiar with. And I'm saying now that this is the point at which we need to start paying attention to what the hit is to the taxpayer. We know now approximately what we want for expenditure, but we need to understand where that expenditure is going to come from.
So, David, first of all, Flora, can you pull up the comparison tab? So I'm not going to fight you, David, over assessment versus miscellaneous, but if you can see there, the total decrease is 131,000, and one can make an argument that that is fully due to the WNESU. But if you take a look at the miscellaneous, which is the high school line, that is also 133,997. So one could make an argument that that deficit or that decrease is fully about high school stuff. So again, people can look at that and draw their own conclusions on, but it's a team effort is really what I would get at, that we aren't there with either one of us really taking the hit, you might say.
Well, Chris, we currently have $138,000 in high school reduction, which is entirely attributable to the SU.
Yep, and 133 contribute directly related to cuts made at the high school level. So again,
what's your total cut, Chris? What's your total cut?
131,533.
And you have 138 coming through the WNESU, which means the other high school categories have actually gone up to compensate for the the difference that you're showing in miscellaneous.
Salaries and benefits, which are not really, I mean, those are what they are, except for cutting staff. And again, my point here is that if we are going to continue to serve the students as best we can, and I think everyone will acknowledge that in the current mode, as best we can is not as good as we'd like it to be, it will not get better if we cut staff. But if I can now speak to
Chris, while we're on the subject of staff, let's go for a moment here. The fiscal year 21 actuals on staff indicate spending, which is now trending to be much higher than what we've budgeted. Is that because—
David, I've got an answer for you on that.
Please, I would like it.
So I saw that as well. And so I asked the business office, what happened is, well, first of all, let me just say this. people are being paid as per what we budgeted. Because when I saw that, I went to some folks and I said, can I see your contracts? And I went to some departments that had easy math for me to work with. And so I just want the board and David, you to know that we are paying people as per what we budgeted. What I found out from the business office is the current financial system is accounting for all of the pay from July 1st in that year-to-date actual. And from July, the new contracts don't kick in with their pay until the middle to late part of August. So the short version here is that year-to-date actual that is high everywhere includes some salary from the last contract. So we are not.
I'm sorry, Chris, it's summer. So for
Yeah,
some reason, e-finance system doesn't have the capability of starting since the contract. It is taken into consideration the year FY21, which it begins in July 1st. But in July 1st, we had some of the faculty providing summer courses or summer encumbrances and salaries. That salaries that was encumbered in the summer from July 1st, it is adding with the one that is in the contract as well.
Right,
so
so-
that is something that we have open a ticket with e-finance and they're looking into it. That we can't change the system. It's just a system issue. But we
But I
did
wanna
bring
assure-
that because all of the other school had the same issue. Each time that we run the reports, it's showing that they were going over the budget and it wasn't matching contracts for the faculty members.
So David, the short version is we are not overspending those lines.
Okay, Chris, thank you. I'll accept that answer.
Okay.
Does anyone have any other questions for Chris?
I've got,
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Priscilla. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, is that I looked at, there are two different things, but dental, FSA, HRA, and HSA, are those based on what they're actually taking now, or is that an estimate for everybody to take that, which would put our budget up more?
On anything related to the benefits, I will have to defer to the central office on that.
Or
So yes, what it is accounted there is for everybody that is having those benefits. It's not for every single employee.
It's having them currently.
It's taking into consideration those ones that are enrolled at the moment and that have those benefits.
So you've equated benefits for those that aren't enrolled as well?
No, if they're not enrolled, the system doesn't calculate for somebody that is not enrolled. No, it's just for whoever is enrolled. It's calculating current employees and current benefits with the changes in the benefit, which is overall 8%. Now, if we have new faculty, that wouldn't be budgeted in there, or those members that decline insurance coverage, they're not there either. That's why when we have compared budgets, maybe from other towns, you can see that some school could show that the budget increase in benefits is 8%. Meanwhile, another school will show 4%, but it's because of the volume of faculty that have those benefits.
Right, and sometimes that decreases if somebody retires as well. But the other question I had was on the COVID costs. There are COVID supplies in there, which have been covered mostly by grants this year. And I know that, they're still struggling with it in Congress, but there was a huge amount that was put in there in the one that was sitting on the president's desk or whatever right now, for schools to have some. So I'm wondering if we really need to put those in there as COVID supplies, or whether we can kind of hopefully just assume that we'll either get a grant possibly, or maybe by then we won't need them.
We did adjustments on the COVID.
A little bit out.
I'm sorry. So as you can see, I highlighted here the only 3 lines that we're using for COVID supplies. Meanwhile, we could have other maybe departments that will have COVID, but we didn't want to put COVID for every single department. we just try to budget for at least the lowest amounts we could. So even year to date, you see that between the FY21 year to date actual is 4,000, almost $5,000 in one line and another 500 in another one. So between the amounts that we try to put in for COVID, it doesn't compare to what we have spent already.
Yeah, and I am confident that between our the money that we have for ops and maintenance, plus the small amount that we have in there, I am not concerned about not having enough money to cover our COVID expenses.
Well, I was wondering whether we even needed any actually budgeted because
Well,
of,
again, as Flora mentioned, there's very little in there. It's just a few thousand, but I think, yes, we could, I would be comfortable with that not in there because of our ability to cover that other ways.
it's only a little bit.
Yeah, the amounts that we put was at nurses, like that is definitely a need, at least for some portion of it. And even if a nurse wouldn't use that $1,000 that we allocated to her department for COVID supplies, there's always so much things that a nurse could need that is not something that we're actually over budgeting for. It could always be used for other things. As well, administration overall is just $500 in case, you know, they need to provide immediate supplies for all of the faculty. Meanwhile, honestly, $500 is not gonna cover all the COVID supplies that the whole staff will need. And the other amount that we put was $2,000 for maintenance, which is including everything that is all those chemicals that they might need to clean the facility. $2,000 will definitely not cover 100% all of those cleaning supplies that maintenance will need if we will have any other outbreak for COVID. So we did went as low as we could to budget at least something for the first step of an emergency of a need for COVID supplies as PPEs or cleaning or anything. But definitely is not 100% coverage.
Okay, and what my last comment would be that what we put in is a budget. The only one we know actual for a full year is fiscal year 20, and that was $400,000 less than what is in there for now. So it is a $400,000 increase from the one that we actually know the end of the year one, 7,121,000. So I don't know. I'm sure that, you know, as Margot said, we don't want things really, really tight so that people can't feel comfortable, but we do need to think about taxpayers, as David said.
Priscilla, I'm going to propose, and this is how I will move forward over the next few years of building budgets, that FY20 actual will not really inform us well at all. We did not have regular school from March 13 on for FY20. And so any numbers that you look at there, they're not realistic for a regular school setting. I'm glad that that all those actuals came in that low, but anything from substitutes to use of toilet paper, you know, anything in there, if there's nobody in the building and we aren't hiring substitutes, and I could go on with a list of things that are clearly going to be lower because the building was empty from, you know, March 13th on. So it's a valid point, but the numbers there don't compare to reality, is I guess is what I would say.
Good point. Thank you.
Yep. And as I said, in, you know, this budget and budgets down the line, there's going to have to be a big asterisk next to FY20 actual, because people will look at that and go, why did we spend so little then? Well, we spent so little then because we were in a pandemic and we were closed for 3 months. Sports is another one. We didn't run our spring sports. So anything associated with spring sports just didn't get spent.
Thank you, Chris. Does Flora, can I see my screen again?
I think Deb Bright still had a question pending. Molly.
Okay.
I do.
Yeah, that's why I asked. I couldn't see anybody. You're on, Deb.
Yeah, I'm concerned with this budget. The only thing that's moved up is wages and benefits. I'm concerned with it in that setting, I understood that we typically use another fund line to put in money for contract additional percentages, not in the wage line. So the only thing that got reduced is necessary tools to run the school, which is what it looks like to me. And everything else is raised. I'm significantly concerned about that. And I don't agree with the budget that way with adding, I don't know, I'm sure I haven't calculated it out, what percentage you've added to all the wages, to all the benefits, especially when there is no new contract in place and perhaps that percentage was going to be zero. The money's now in the wrong category. What would you say to that?
I would have to defer to the superintendent on that because it was his decision on how to account for any potential salary increases.
Yeah, we have to, whether it's going to be 0%, 10%, 5%, we have to budget for some sort of contingency for negotiations. And we're still trying to keep in there this year's negotiations that haven't been settled yet, as well as next year and stuff. So the contingency that was put in there was done with guidance from the SU board chair.
We're going to use the contingency from last year, right? I mean, actually FY21, not FY20, but FY21, there is money in there that hasn't been used.
Right,
correct?
But that is correct. We have to keep that in there because once it is settled, there's probably going to have to, be back pay owed to them. So we need to budget for both years as far as contingencies.
I understand that, Chris. My concern here is the contingency fund is where we typically put that money. And this year you've actually added it to the salaries, which makes it an anticipated expectation. I would prefer we do it the way we have done in past years. Changing it now doesn't look appropriate, especially since we haven't worked out an arrangement yet with the contract.
We changed that based on guidance from the auditors in regards to where it should be. So
I'm
that's
sorry,
why
you said you changed it because of what?
we changed it based on the guidance from the auditors and where it should be and the reasons for it being there. So where it was in the past, we're advised that. Go
So
ahead.
what percentage did you add? What calculation did you use?
Open session because that'll put them at a disadvantage for negotiation.
Well, anyone who's on this call can see right now what the budget looks like and exactly how much money that is. So it's not private. At this point, it's public information. We're not in executive session. That $89,000 or $82,000 added to salaries is there. I just wanted to know what formula you used to add that money. Is that, I don't know if that's 2%, 10%. I haven't done the math, and I'd just like to know what formula you use to figure that out. And again, it's public, so.
I used an overall percentage based on previous years of negotiation and what we've used for contingencies.
Thank you. I don't agree with doing it that way, but thank you for the answer.
I'm just going by, auditors are telling us what we should do and to do better. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to follow the auditor's leads on this.
David?
Okay, I think I need to own a little bit of this. And in the course of owning it, I think we need to have some historical perspective here. In the past, boards have usually caucused so that there is agreement among the boards what we're putting in for contingency. This course was not a year when we were able to do everything that we needed to do in a timely fashion, Chris consulted me. I said, you better get something in there for contingency, because if we fail to have something in the contingency line, we give the association grounds to make a claim that we are not negotiating in good faith if we are not willing to put any money in to negotiate with. There's an argument that says that you can always deficit spend it and go back to your taxpayers, but I would make the argument that that's not really a responsible action if you know that you may end up with some form of liability. So what I'm trying to say here is that I think that Chris did the best he could by the boards, and he did seek the advice of his SU board chair, meaning me. And I want you to understand that if there's unhappiness here, that the unhappiness should not be borne strictly by Chris Pratt, superintendent of schools, but also by David Clark, who's the chair of the WNESU board. I think we needed to do it. Perhaps we could have found a more adroit way to put it into the budget, but as you pointed out, Deb, it is what it is, and we own it.
Flora, when will we need to accept a budget?
It should be by the second week of January.
Okay, so at our next meeting, we're gonna need to vote on this budget. Does anyone have any other questions before we adjourn?
I have a question. This is Margot.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, are there any sort of outstanding numbers that are not in this budget that we're waiting on, or that are not really accurately represented here? Or is this pretty much what the numbers we've been waiting for?
The only thing that I'm waiting for, and I have been sending emails to my colleagues in Springfield and Brattleboro, is whether or not there are finalized career center budgets that can update this budget, because currently what is in there for the career centers are level funded. And David, I don't know if you've been actively involved in the career center RVTC budget process and where they are with that.
I have, Chris, and we are aiming and expect to achieve a level funded budget.
Okay.
Of course, the moving part in that is that our enrollments compared to the other schools which send students to RVTC will ultimately determine what our share of the assessment is.
Sure. So that's your answer. Was that Margot that asked?
Yes, thank you.
So based on what David said, level funding it right now, that doesn't leave me feeling like those numbers are going to change significantly. Let me just say that. So before we move on, there's one other point, budget related, that we typically decide about, and this is another thing that will probably need to come up at the next meeting, is we have an anticipated surplus of $135,075. What we have typically done with that is roll a certain amount of it over into revenue for the budget that we're working on, and do a special article to set aside a portion of that for a maintenance reserve fund. This might be the year where we just roll it all over in order to, again, provide the best taxpayer relief that we can. And I would not in any way oppose that. I would just let board members know that the larger you let that rollover be, the bigger hit you take if it's not there in a following year. And that's why we've kind of compromised to rolling over 1% worth of the overall budget and then the rest of it into a reserve fund. So that's just something for further consideration, but it does impact, as David was referencing, it does impact that overall tax rate potentially in a positive way. In other words, helps the taxpayers out. So something to think about for the next time we come together.
So Chris, I would like to put my 2 cents into that. You know, we've had a year that if anybody told us a year ago this would happen, we would have told them they're crazy, but it happened. And it's still happening, but it's gonna eventually level out, hopefully go away, and we still need a driveway.
Yep.
And so if we can roll some of that over into that fund and keep building that fund, you know, the more everything is more expensive now than it ever was a year and a half ago when we actually looked at it. And I would like us to roll some of that into the surplus if we can. You know,
You mean
into
roll
that
some of it into
that maintenance fund.
reserve fund, yeah. So just so that folks know, and again, maybe we talk about this more later. Last year we put 46,811 into that reserve fund from the surplus. The year before that, we put 31,811. So there is at least 78,622 and probably more. I just went back a couple of years. So it's a fund that we grow steadily, and then we do really good things with that money. So I'm just saying that those are a couple of options out there for the board to consider.
Well, I think you're doing a great job with the budget, and if we can put some money into that fund, then we need to continue to do that.
Okay.
Thank you. I think we've beaten around the bush about as hard as we can tonight, and
I'm sorry to
I don't
interrupt,
see-
Molly. Colin had his hand up, and I think at one point Steve did as well.
Okay, I was just looking to see, so. Colin James, you're up.
Real quick, it's late. I'm not gonna continue going on and on and on, but I agree with Molly on your last statement with the parking lot. The other thing is kind of, I just don't really see, I understand we're in a pandemic, but if the money's there, I just don't understand why we can't just move on it now. That's just my own opinion. The other thing is with the monies with spring, fall sports, I believe it was, if the money is there and we didn't spend it, that just rolls over, correct? Or do we have to vote on that specific number again to put it into the new budget?
Nope, that will just become a part of the overall surplus that we work with.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Steve, fine.
I would like to read a small selection that is aimed largely at my mentor, Mr. Clark, and also Chris Pratt. You probably all heard it before, but it seemed to me to be appropriate.
This is for budget stuff?
No,
Or is
this
this
has
director's
nothing
comments?
to do with the budget that you're talking about, but it is related tangentially. And this is the story of the wise old owl. You know, you remember that? There was an owl who lived in an oak. The more he heard, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. Oh, if members of this board could be as smart as that wise old bird. That's my contribution to this discussion.
Thank you. I would like to move on to director's comments, please. Thank you, everyone, for your work on the budget, and we will vote on it next meeting. Mr. Fine, do you have anything else you'd like to say? All right, I'm going to move to David Clark, director's comments.
Thank you, Molly. As I think most people in the room are aware, the governor has changed the guidance on what schools can ask about student travel, family travel, and the guidance was you can't ask. I think that we as boards really need to think about that, because when there is a matter of the safety of the group versus what you might refer to as the rights of the individual, I think the safety of the group really needs to trump those individual rights. This is a discussion we've been having on a national scale for the last 4 years, I think, where there are a number of liberty-loving people who would prefer to have that liberty without responsibility. And I bluntly think that it is appropriate and imperative that we do the screening that we've done before. And by the way, I was picking on the governor, but it was actually the Secretary of Education who issued that guidance. And I'm going to suggest that certainly when the SU board meets, and possibly the local boards as well, that we should consider resolving to ignore the Secretary of Education's guidance and continue to ask kids and families if they have been observing appropriate travel and socialization protocols, because the health of our communities is dependent on it.
Thank you. Priscilla?
Just a comment, Pats are 3, Bills are 3, 5 minutes to the half. So I personally want to go watch the game. Have a
Thank
great
you.
evening, everybody.
Brenda?
I'm all set.
Thank you. Colin?
Goodbye, 2020. Welcome, 2021. Happy New Year.
Deb Wright?
I didn't think I had anything to say until David spoke, and that would be if you plan on asking one, you must ask all. And I'm talking about every participant, which includes the teachers and the staff and the nurses and the coaches and everyone else involved. Anyone who has to be asked, it must be all in order to be appropriate. And however, I would say we've been told not to ask. I don't see any reason why we need, if we're not going to ask everyone, then there isn't any need to ask anyone. Goodbye, 2020.
Margot?
I'm all set, thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. We will have a meeting, I believe, Chris, it's the second Monday of January, but we'll send something out to you and we're gonna vote on a budget then. Thank you very much.